The FDA will not approve.
Welcome, everyone, here to News Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. We want to take you out to this breaking news that we are getting from President Trump's legal team regarding Pennsylvania, everybody. So let me just read this coming here for you right here on News Now from Fox as we were just getting this in. And then we are actually going to take you out to Pennsylvania as well here. So just moments away from this update here as Jenna Ellis reporting this, that Pennsylvania court grants hearing in election integrity case challenging the constitutionality of Act 77. That's mail-in ballots here. So we're hearing the order right now. It says now, November 25th, 2020, upon consideration of petitioner's motion for emergency injunction, the subsequent filings by the parties, and the new allegations raised in petitioner's supplemental application for emergency relief filed at 11:42 p.m. on November 24th, 2020. It is hereby preliminary ordered and decreed there. And so that is important there, as Jenna Ellis is saying, the constitutional law attorney there and senior legal advisor for President Trump, saying that this is important because respondents are preliminary enjoined from doing so pending an evidentiary hearing to be held on Friday, November 27th at 11:30 there. So that is the big news coming there. It looks like they will be having a hearing on this for the mail-in ballots there. So we will continue to follow that here for you on News Now from Fox. But I want to keep the breaking news coverage going here because we're going to now take you out to Pennsylvania. This is a public hearing by the Pennsylvania Majority Policy Committee to discuss 2020 election issues and alleged problems. The hearing will feature also former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani as well. Let's listen into this.
Very different story. That's why we're here today, again, as agents of public opinion. Senator Mastriano and his staff have assembled a number of witnesses who will share their experiences with us regarding the conduct of this year's election. We look forward to listening to that testimony. But before we turn there, I want to introduce my good friend, our caucus administrator, and as of December 1st, our incoming majority leader. Congratulations to Kim Ward. Thank you for joining us. Please, Kim, your statement.
Thank you, Senator Argel, and thank you, Senator Mastriano, for inviting me to participate in what I think is very, very important to the people of Pennsylvania. As Senator Argel has said, we have been inundated with calls and emails and messages in our social media. People are not feeling good nor confident about the process and the results because of that process. The president and his team deserve, this is a president of the United States, not the president of your middle school board. So we need to make sure that they have the room that they need to explore every avenue. So when this is over, we know that the process, what worked in it, what didn't work in it, and what we need to do to fix it and what we may need to do to address it. This has been very, very exhausting and hard on so many in Pennsylvania. And I look forward to listening to what the testifiers and Mr. Giuliani have to say to us today. So thank you very much again, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senator Mastriano.
Thank you, Kim. Senator Mastriano, please.
Thank you, Senator Argel, and Senator Ward, thank you for being here and supporting this here, and welcome everybody to this most historic occasion and this most historic town. And what happened here in 1863, I think today we're going to see a turning of the tide because we have not really heard the truth of the arguments made on the other side on what happened. And we're dealing with a government and leadership in Harrisburg that wants to close their ears to what's happened during this election, and sadly many in the media that are complicit and want to write off what happened. So for me, on this battlefield and remembering what happened 157 years ago, especially 157 years ago last week, where Abraham Lincoln gave his most famous address, and I think his final sentence captures why we're here today. He said that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And everything is at stake in what happened during this election cycle. Everything. The republic is at stake. This is no game for us. And for any veteran in this room here who wore the uniform, such as Brigadier General Scott Perry, thank you for being here, sir. put their lives on the line here fighting for a country, and to see that there's a group in this state and country willing to throw away our valuable and precious freedoms here for power. You know, for me, there we go. And Mr. Mayor, it's going to be a fantastic hearing today. Despite pleas from our citizens, the governor refuses to even consider that there was any shenanigans in the elections here in our state, a state of 13 million people, and he wants to discount because his guy won that nothing bad happened, and that's just unacceptable. If there's any hint of fraud out there, we need to investigate. Any governor serving the people, this Commonwealth, would put aside his petty politics, and find out the truth, if anyone was defrauded. And at this point here, he's unwilling to do that. Let me point out some hard facts here. We are in Adams County, named after our second president, John Adams, who famously said, "Facts are stubborn things." Let me lay out several of these inconvenient truths, as Al Gore would have us think. There have been many allegations of voting law violations across the state, and the governor serving the people would have to move heaven and earth to ensure no one was defrauded, but yet he's not moved to action. And even his Secretary of State, of course, says that there was no shenanigans of great concern. And I'll remind everyone that I was a no vote on the confirmation of Kathleen Bookvar 4 times that I interacted with her. I asked her, why are elections in Afghanistan more secure than in Pennsylvania? And she sat there and blinked and couldn't give me a straight answer. That elections are more safe and secure in a war-torn country devastated by conflict since 1979. What is going on here? The place where this all started in 1776, and we can't get an election right? You got to be kidding me here. And so as a result of her inaction, the governor's inaction, refusal to even look into any of the allegations, and to discount the very essential freedoms of our citizens, we are here today to try to find out what the heck happened in the election. You know, and likewise, our Attorney General, our senior law enforcement official here, you know, instead of being focused on making sure things are lined up in kosher, before one vote was counted in Pennsylvania, the day before the election declared Biden the winner. I mean, there's nothing to see here. Could you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? Would the media be so gracious and merciful and kind if it was a Republican? Absolutely not. And so, Houston, we have a problem here. You know, one of the most troubling things in this whole endeavor here, and it's not just because of the COVID, it's just a lack of transparency and accountability. So we're here to start shedding light on the darkness. And then, of course, we have a Supreme Court that rewrote election law. You know, Act 77 has been painted as a villain. Okay, we could debate that. But the real problem is when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decided they're going to write legislation and rewrite our law. And because of that, obviously, Pennsylvania, we got a lot of problems there. And that opened the door to all the shenanigans and abuses and folly that we're dealing with here in this state this day. So what's going on here? Thousands of people from across the Commonwealth have reached out to us, tens of thousands, asking and demanding action. They deserve it. And as a result of the inability of our executive branch to do their job, we're stepping in here. We're co-equal members, and we're going to do our job. We're looking for transparency and truth. There's going to be no grandstanding here. We're after facts. And we're going to have a good layout here of what happened. And you're going to have to decide, good people of Pennsylvania, on what happened and whether there's a strong case to be made or not. You know, the forgotten men and women of our great state feel betrayed by their government. And I'm with them. I feel the betrayal as well. So we undertake these proceedings today to find out what happened and then hopefully come up with an approach where it never happens again. And the issues are galore. You're going to hear about poll watchers being denied access, where election software vendors refuse to testify before the General Assembly. What do they got to hide? Do we expect the people to trust their government? And we got to earn their trust. And this is no game, and the very republic very much is at stake. Anyone who loves this country has to put aside their petty partisan politics and allow the light to shine where it is. And we're going to find the truth and celebrate it. You know, as a soldier and now as an elected member of the state Senate, I'm not going to stand aside, and neither of the members around me are as well. We're going to fight the good fight for freedom and secure our republic. Too many good men and women have gone before us here, given their lives here, and to cast it aside now for power play is unacceptable and it's not going to happen. Thank you. We do our great men and women in uniform and those who lay down their lives and gain a last full measure of devotion a great disservice if we stand aside and allow bureaucrats and corrupt politicians to steal their voice and maybe even steal an election. We'll find out. John 8:3, thank you. John 8:3-6 says that if Jesus set you free, you're free indeed. We're going to walk as free people in Pennsylvania. This is where it all started. We choose this day to walk as free men and women in honor of the sacrifice not only of Jesus on Calvary, but also in honor of the sacrifice of brave men and women in uniform who fought for and secured our freedoms. We will be relentless in our pursuit of the transparency, of accountability, and truth. The time for dithering, politics, and games is over. The time for truth and justice is now. In conclusion, as Benjamin Franklin was leaving Constitutional Hall in 1787, he was approached by Mrs. Powell, and Mrs. Powell ran up to him. We surmise she knew him personally, and she said, "Well, Mr. Franklin, what do we have, a monarchy or a republic?" And he said, "A republic if you can keep it." This is our time to keep this republic. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator Mastriano. We turn now to the introductions of our House and Senate members. Let's begin with our representatives here at this end of the table. Gentlemen, ladies.
Is it on? Yeah, Representative Dave Zimmerman, serving the northeast part of Lancaster County.
Representative Greg Rothman, the 87th District, Cumberland County.
Representative Mike Jones, 93rd District, York County.
Representative Paul Schemmel, portions of Franklin County.
Representative Rob Kaufman, 89th District, Northern Franklin County.
Representative Stephanie Borowitz from the 76th District. I'm honored to be here fighting for freedom, so thanks.
Hi, Senator Judy Ward from Blair County, representing Blair, parts of Huntington, parts of Franklin County, part of Cumberland County, and all of Fulton County.
Wow.
You've already met Senator Kim Ward. I believe you know Senator Mastriano. There we go.
Good afternoon. I'm Senator Mario Scavello from Monroe, Northampton County, and I can see New Jersey from my district.
Senator Mike Regan from Cumberland and York County.
Good afternoon. State Representative Dan Mell. Welcome to my 91st Legislative District.
Representative Frank Ryan from Lebanon County, Breakaway Probate. Thank you.
We are also joined on Zoom Senator Brooks and Senator Hutchinson from Northwestern Pennsylvania, Senator Yaw from the Williamsport area, Senator Stefano from Southwestern Pennsylvania, Senator Laughlin from Erie, Senator Martin from Lancaster County, Senator Pittman from Indiana County, Senator Pat Brown from the Lehigh Valley. Also, my job as chairman is to remind our panelists to keep their microphones muted until it is your turn to speak, and also remind everyone to strictly observe our time limits. One other reminder to our senators and witnesses at the request of our Senate attorneys, this is a legislative hearing. Our purpose is to listen to the complaints of our constituents, the oversight of government agencies, and the need for possible legislation.
Stay right here with us, folks, on News Now from Fox, taking a quick 2-minute break.
Senator Mastriano, I believe you want to introduce our first witness for 15 minutes. And we will hold, to the representatives and senators so you understand, we will hold all of our questions until the conclusion of the 6th panel.
I would just simply say, welcome to America's Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Giuliani, for being here.
Representatives, Senator Mastriani, and all the distinguished members of the legislature of Pennsylvania, we are very, very honored and very appreciative that you are giving us an opportunity to be heard, which we've been denied almost uniformly by the media and by legislatures elsewhere. All we ask is that you listen to the facts that we're presenting and then evaluate it. I can't help but note that we're doing it here in Gettysburg. Over 156 years ago, the fate of our country hung in the balance right here on this hallowed ground for 3 relentless days of bloody close combat between 2 armies that lost over 50,000 casualties. The fate of our republic was really decided that we'd be one nation, one union, one government, sharing values that are enormously important to us. And I don't want to overstate it, but I do believe that those values are at stake, not only in this election, but in the way this election was conducted and in what we're going to do about it. Because if we allow elections in the future to be conducted the way this election was conducted, we will have lost our democracy, our representative democracy. During the course of this election, we've come pretty close to losing our right of free speech. There's been censorship that I've never seen before, of an incredible nature by big tech, big networks, big companies. They only allow one side to be heard, and they refuse to allow the other side to be heard. It's almost as if they're afraid the American people, if they should learn these facts, will find out just who they are and what they're about. This voter fraud that took place, which, as you will see from the witnesses that we call, had several dimensions to it, several different ways in which it was done. The most dangerous thing is it is very, very similar in at least 6 states that we've been able to study. In other words, what we're going to describe to you with these witnesses happened in roughly the same way in Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. Primary device were the mail-in ballots. You know there was a fierce debate over whether we should have mail-in ballots in the first place. Many scholars, many experts always felt that mail-in ballots were very dangerous because they're very easy to forge. It leads to more defrauding. We were warned by Justice Souter, among others. We were warned by President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker in a report that they did on how to make elections more secure. They warned us that the one thing to do is do not go to general mail-in voting, because every place it's been used, it's led to tremendous fraud. And that was reiterated, believe it or not, in an article in the New York Times in 2012, an article they have now forgotten they wrote, that explained the same thing. And I think what you're going to find as you study your mail-in ballot procedure here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and then in the 6 other places, this was a terrible mistake. And it allowed the leadership of a party that had become pretty expert at voter fraud to really go wild. So the witnesses we present are going to first show you that in the case of Philadelphia and in the case of Allegheny County and 1 or 2 other counties, the mail-in ballots that were received were not inspected at all by any Republican. They were hidden from Republicans. In the case of Philadelphia and Allegheny County, I can't be absolutely certain, but I do believe the witnesses will show that a Republican never got to see a single ballot. Now, you know how important that is to determining whether it is a valid ballot or not. There's only one time you get to do that, and that's when you separate the envelope that possesses the verifying information from the ballot. The moment you separate them, you can no longer verify. You can't go back and recount. You can't go back and check paper ballot against the machine ballot because it's a private ballot. It's an anonymous ballot. We want to keep it that way. The only thing that identifies it is that outer envelope. At that moment, when they're separated, gone forever. That's the moment at which inspections have been allowed, time immemorial, in America, Pennsylvania, all of our other 49 states. Several of the witnesses here have been doing this for 20 or 30 years. They've never heard of a situation in which a mail-in ballot was just put in without allowing a Republican, a Democrat, even third-party members to take one look at it and object to it, for the very reason that it's too prone to fraud. Think about this. In your state, Republicans were uniformly not allowed, kept out, put in chutes like they were cows to keep them away from seeing these ballots. Never happened before. Not only that, the same thing was done in Michigan, the same thing was done in Wisconsin, and on and on and on. What's the chance that on the morning of November 3rd or 4th, when they started the count, that in each one of those places, the Democrat leadership of these highly controlled Democrat cities that have some history for corruption, and in the case of Philadelphia, a long history of voter fraud. I could show you the convictions. I don't think I have to. What are the odds that they're all going to wake up with the same idea? After years and years of always examining together absentee ballots, all of a sudden, in a year in which we have a couple million of them per state, we're not going to allow any Republicans to see them. The person in Philly figures that out, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Milwaukee, Las Vegas, Nevada? Or is it more likely that this was a common plan that maybe started with the whole idea of having mail ballots because it gives you a much wider range to cheat? When you had just a small number of absentee ballots, like 400,000, you have a certain range that you can cheat. When you have 250 or 2.5 million, you have a much bigger range to do that. So when you hear that testimony about not being allowed to see the ballot, you have to understand it's much more important than just that individual ballot. On election night, when I went to sleep, maybe when you did, President Trump was leading in your state by somewhere around 700 to 800,000 votes, depending on when you went to sleep. That's a huge number of votes. 65% of the vote had been cast. Under normal circumstances, like if this were a fair media, your state would have been called for Trump. I mean, Virginia was called with 10% of the vote. It turned out to be separated by 1%. I think we may have actually won Virginia, but that's another battle. Michigan, we were ahead by 300,000 votes. Wisconsin, more. Georgia, we were down to 90% and ahead. What are the odds that they all switched overnight? They just switched by the next day. I think you're going to see how that happened. And I think there are a couple of statistics that you have to really closely look at. I'll just mention them and then we'll move on to the witnesses. We have calculated, and the evidence will show, that there were 682,770 mail-in ballots that were entered into your votes in just Allegheny County and in Philadelphia that were not observed by any single Republican. Those ballots could have all been for Joe Biden. They could have all been for someone else. They could have had no identifying data. They could have been from the same person. There could have been multiples of them. There could have been no name on them. We have no idea if that's true. And it will be very hard now to kind of put them together. We could ask, and you could subpoena, all of the outer envelopes. It'd be very interesting to take a look at the 682,770 outer envelopes. It'd be very interesting if they were kept. And it would be very interesting to see how many of them weren't filled out. But in any event, under the law of your state, which is set by you, those ballots are illegal. The judge, mistakenly in his opinion, said that we want to disenfranchise 6 million people. We don't want to disenfranchise anyone. We want to disqualify 682,000 votes so that 74 million people are not disenfranchised, because that's what happened by the cheating that went on here. I'll give you one other enormously puzzling statistic. You sent out in the state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 148 absentee or mail-in ballots. You received back 1.4 million approximately. However, in the count for president, you counted 2.5 million. I don't know what accounts for that 700,000 difference between the number of ballots you sent out and the number of ballots that ended up in the count. That number, 2,589,242, was on your government website until yesterday. And yesterday it was removed without explanation. I'm going to be very interested in hearing what the explanation is, and I can't imagine you could possibly certify without knowing the explanation of that, as well as the explanation to the 22,686 mail-in ballots that were returned on the day they were mailed. That's a trick. How about they were returned, how about 32,591 were returned the day after they were mailed? Another 20,000 were returned before they were mailed. Of course, I think this is a kind of a low count, and I guess the crooks in Philadelphia are disappointed in this. They only submitted 8,021 ballots from dead people, mail-in ballots for dead people. It's probably easier for dead people to submit mail-in ballots than it is to vote in person. You had about 30,000 of those. We're checking the records of the cemeteries around Philadelphia. You have 4,984 mail-in ballots that were never requested, and on and on and on and on. Your election, because of these two counties and maybe one other, is a sham. It's a disgrace to your state. And finally, I don't need to remind you of this. I think I need to remind America of this. The election for the President of the United States is not run by the governor of your state. It's not run by your election commissioner. The United States Constitution makes it clear who has the responsibility for running this election. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of our Constitution doesn't say that ABC gets to call the winner or CNN. It says, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. It's the state legislature that controls this process. It's your power. It's your responsibility. And I think you know, and you have to convince the rest of your members, Republican and Democrat, they owe that to the people of your state, and they owe that to the people of the United States. Because if this happens without consequence, if they can just enter 600,000 some odd mail-in ballots without allowing a single Republican to view it, what's to say that next time they won't do 1 million or 2 million? I know crooks really well. You give them an inch and they take a mile, and you give them a mile and they take your whole country. So now we'll proceed with the witnesses.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Giuliani. I've been informed that we have also been joined on Zoom by Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill, Representative Don Kiefer, Representative Barb Gleim from Central Pennsylvania, Representative Darrell Metcalf from Butler County, and Senator Langerhoek from Johnstown area. Senator Mastriano, would you like to introduce our next panel for the, looks to me like several people for 15 minutes as well.
Yes, thank you, Senator Argo. So our witnesses, first off, Jenna Ellis, do you have any comments for the floor? Or? Thank you. Legal advisor to President Trump.
Thank you very much. And I'll reserve my comments for the end, and I would just echo everything that the mayor so eloquently stated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is a revised list here. So we'd like to call forth Justin Queter from Philadelphia. Justin, are you here? Okay, outstanding. If you can come up to the table, please, my friend. And Kim Peterson out of Pittsburgh. Kim, are you here? Come forth, please. We have a seat for you here, I guess.
All right, as they get ready for those next witnesses, we will take a quick 2-minute break for some of you right here on News Now from Fox. Stay with us.
Yeah, Kayla, could you push those 2 chairs over? Thank you. And that American flag is mine. If you set it on the table, I'd appreciate it. Thanks. And then Greg Stenstrom from Delaware County. You're zooming in, I believe. Oh, he's here? Yeah, of course, I met you. Come on over, brother. We're going to swear him in.
Okay, if you can, among yourselves, please divide up the next 15 minutes, and again, we'll hold all questions until the end. Please begin.
I'll start. Thank you, senators and representatives, for inviting me to this important hearing. My name is Justin C. Queter, Kweder. I am a resident and registered voter in the city and county of Philadelphia. I'm an attorney. I am barred here in the Commonwealth. I am a volunteer certified GOP canvass observer. I was present at the Philadelphia Convention Center during the pre-canvass, canvass processing, and counting of the ballots cast in this year's general election. I was first present as an observer at the Convention Center and at the count on Election Day. I returned as a volunteer observer to watch the process every day for the next 10 days. I'd approximate I was there for about 85 hours over those 10 days. Part of the reason that I kept going back was so that I could authoritatively speak about what I saw. And again, thank you for letting me be here. Because what I saw was problematic, to say the least. I can tell you that I am an eyewitness to many issues and irregularities that were observed in Philadelphia with the processing and counting of the vote. I was a witness to too many issues and irregularities to cover in a brief opening statement. And as such, I will now focus on just 2 issues that I did personally observe. First, the Philadelphia Board of Elections processed hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots with 0 civilian oversight or observation. The mail-in ballots were handled, processed, opened, and counted in Hall F of the Convention Center. Hall F is a vast room, approximately 350 feet by 350 feet. That's about 120,000 square feet. The Board of Elections erected a fence approximately 50 feet into the hall that ran the length of the room. All observers were corralled behind the fence. More than 100 board workers processed and opened mail-in ballots on the other side of the fence. These masked workers were arranged throughout the 120,000 square feet at a distance from the observers of about 10 feet to more than 200 feet away from us. Unlike what some may have reported in the media, the vast majority, and I'd estimate at least 96% of the board workers were processing mail-in ballots 15 to 200 plus feet from us. Due to the distance of the workers from the erected fences, it was impossible for me or any observer to see what the workers were doing with any type of specificity. The observers were not able to challenge any decision or determination being made about the processing of these mail-in ballots. No civilian oversight over hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots, 0 opportunity for observers to observe, challenge, or inspect the mail-ins being opened. I find this to be an issue and to be irregular. Move on to the second point, the pink highlighted duplicate ballots, which I haven't heard about, at least not in the media. As the weeks progressed, the observers were informed that the board was going to be duplicating damaged mail-in ballots that could not be read by the scanners. I was told that there were more than 5,000 of these damaged ballots. I was also told that the actual number was unknown and could be much higher. The process for duplicating these ballots was for 2 workers to work as a pair. One worker reading out loud what was marked on the original damaged ballot, and the second worker using a pink highlighter to mark the choice on the duplicate ballot. The board's plan then was to run the pink highlighted ballots through the scanners where they would be counted as votes. The board workers did this pink highlighter duplication work over the course of a couple days until thousands of ballots were duplicated with these pink highlighters. On Thursday, November 12th, the observers were informed that the pink highlighter could not be read by the scanners. They all had to be done again. All of the duplicated mail-in ballots had to be fixed. And the Philadelphia Board of Elections' solution to this problem was to give the workers who were working alone, individually, stacks of hundreds of what amounted to blank mail-in ballots. And the workers, individually, were to fill in the correct highlighted ovals with dark pen. No observation. They were marking thousands of blank mail-in ballots. The workers did this double recreation work for hours before the observers realized what was going on, because we weren't told what was going on. Only when the observers confronted the deputy commissioner about this irregularity was a system set up where the workers would show the observers each double recreated mail-in ballot by flashing it at them for a second from a distance of 6 to 20 feet away, for as good as that was. Thousands of mail-in ballots were ultimately counted in this way. Again, I find this to be an issue and to be irregular. As Senator Mastriano recently said, elections are a fundamental principle of our democracy. Unfortunately, Pennsylvanians have lost faith in the electoral system, end quote. And let me add a quote that Philadelphia City Commissioner of Elections Al Schmidt just made when he said about these recent elections in Philadelphia that these were the most secure and transparent elections in Philadelphia's history, end quote. Now, I wasn't around for every election in Philadelphia's history, but I can tell you as an eyewitness, for 10 days, for more than 80 hours, what I saw was not a secure and transparent election. There are major concerns about the legitimacy of hundreds of thousands of ballots that were counted in Philadelphia. Excuse me. All right, let me finish with this. May I suggest to you that any restoration of faith on the part of Pennsylvanians in our electoral system can and will only be accomplished after an investigation into this election, only after the law is properly applied to this election. The idea that we can just move on by making sure that the law is properly applied in the next election is, in my opinion, unacceptable. The issues, irregularities, and illegitimacy of what I saw leads me to conclude that the laws of the Commonwealth and of the United States were not being followed in Philadelphia when hundreds of thousands of ballots were counted in this year's general election. Action must be taken now to maintain our free and fair elections and to preserve and protect our elections' integrity. I look forward to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Peterson, and I appreciate that I'm here today. Thank you all for having me here today. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I am here to tell you what I witnessed as a canvasser where at the warehouse where they open the mail-in ballots and separate them from the envelopes as we had been discussing. As the afternoon of Election Day, I went to the down to the warehouse to be a canvasser, as a Republican representative, to be able to watch them open the mail-in ballots. And as the gentleman, Justin, just described, as I was led back to the area where we were able to view them opening the mail-in ballots, we were kept in a corral that was at least 15 to 20 feet from any of the representatives, and that was the closest people opening the ballots. There were people that were 50, 100 feet from us. The closest that was 20 feet about, and you could not see at all the envelope, the ballot itself, where they were stacking them, anything that was required that we were able to see. There were also monitors up around the area. The monitors were pathetic, to be honest. They were fuzzy, looked like they were using old technology as far as I mean, we have the most clearest televisions created, in the world now, and these were, probably from the 60s. You're looking at all of these multiple cameras, screenshots put together of people opening ballots, but you could not even see at all or witness anything if anything was any misdoing or anything going wrong. It was very discouraging on my part. I was very much looking forward to being a part of that day and representing myself and Pennsylvanians in a fair election. And I was, I guess, discouraged about it. I love this country and I love Pennsylvania. I was not born and raised in Pennsylvania, but I have been here for 30 years. And it is very important to me that this election be fair. And thank you again for having me.
First and foremost, my name is Leah Hoops. I'm from Delaware County, Pennsylvania. I was a poll watcher on the day of election, and I was also present at the counting center in Chester, Pennsylvania. So first and foremost, thank you to this committee and all those involved, and especially Senator Mastriano and former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. To our fearless and brave president, thank you for being our shield and putting us first, and I am forever grateful. It is an absolute honor to be a part of this hearing and to finally have an opportunity to speak about what took place in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. I feel as an American that it is my duty to help protect the integrity of our elections, not just for me, but for every American. There are many who have lost life and limb for my right to vote. I want to give a brief introduction and history of how I got involved in this election. 4 years ago, Donald Trump came down an escalator and I knew that he was here to take back our country. I was born and raised in Delaware County in a conservative home. I was taught from an early age to love thy neighbor, defend your country, and by all means, always speak the truth. I took those values throughout my life and applied them in every avenue possible, which brings me up to the present. And about 18 months ago, I became a volunteer and assisted with a campaign for a magisterial judge. In that process, I was approached by my current chairman and became an appointed committeewoman for the Bethel Township Republican Party. In conjunction with my committee position, I also started volunteering for the Trump campaign, registering voters, and assisting with events. During this time, I started a watchdog group and reached out to the Thomas More Society. Now associates, we've been focusing our efforts in election integrity. Our greatest efforts have been in following closely the newly elected and completely Democrat-run Delaware County Council and the Democrat Majority Election Board. This also includes any and all contractors, support staff, and any key players involved. What we found was actually concerning. Not only was private grant money used from the Center for Tech and Life owned by Google and Mark Zuckerberg, but pop-up voter sites were also approved. These pop-up voter sites were placed in heavily Democrat cities, including Chester and Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, in which case the grant money from the CTCL was used to pay for electioneering. It was literally a one-stop shop. Walk in, apply, get your ballot, submit, and you were out the door. But where this didn't take place was in heavily Republican and independent areas. Let's also make note that the voting machine warehouse supervisor is a Bernie Sanders delegate, who was also solely responsible for every scanner, machine, V-card, and all machines with absolutely zero experience in this area. The real story is the $2.1 million spent to move the counting center from the courthouse in Media, Pennsylvania to the Okay. Okay. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I forgot where I was. Okay, so the real story is the $2.1 million spent to move the counting center from the courthouse in Media, Pennsylvania, which has been something that has been done for decades, to the wharf in Chester, Pennsylvania. Let me explain to you the layout of the counting center. It is in the middle of a huge parking lot, which sits back on Seaport Drive next to loading docks. It has multi-million-dollar connections to the company Power HRG and Subaru Park Soccer Stadium. The counting center was on the first floor, in which there were multiple places to bring in ballots in and out of, elevators and many rooms in which workers had access. I was there for 3 straight days. What became of concern was the back room, which had no observers, no line of sight or transparency into the process. There was no cooperation, complete resistance from election night and every day after. It took until our lawyer got an injunction to get into that back room in which pre-canvassing was transpiring. Even with an injunction, which was a joke, we were granted 5 minutes every 2 hours, and the setup was sitting in a chair 20 feet from any physical ballot. I truly wish I had enough time today to recreate what I witnessed and felt during those moments, but we did not gather here today just for me and my experience, but rather a collection of experiences from Americans like myself. What I hope to achieve is for the public to understand is that we have stuck our necks out, have been intimidated, threatened, bullied, have spent countless hours away from our families, friends, and jobs. We have signed affidavits under penalty of perjury, which should be consideration enough to know that this is a very serious issue. I'm here for one thing only, and that is to speak the truth. This is not about party. This is about my country. Every American deserves transparency, truth, and be able to question those in power without fear of intimidation, bullying, or backlash. I hope this committee takes action if needed, and justice will be swift to anyone involved in fraudulent activity. The Republic is angry, disgruntled, tired, beaten up, and ready to defend this country. Yes. Thank you. Without election integrity, we are just another banana republic. I thank you again for your time, efforts, and service, and it is an honor to be here and to be part of a historical moment. Thank you.
It's a tough group to follow. My name is Gregory Stenstrom. I'm from Delaware County. I'm a father, a family man. I was a former commanding officer and executive officer in the Navy. I'm a veteran of foreign wars. I'm a CEO of my own private company. I'm a data scientist. I'm a forensic computer scientist. I'm an expert in security and fraud. Leah had recruited me for this election, and I was glad. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So for the first part of the day, I was a poll watcher in the city of Chester, and I was with just another former U.S. Marine officer, and the two of us were the only GOP poll watchers in the city of Chester, which is about 40,000 people. Because of the consolidation for COVID, there were 7 polls that we were allowed to, that we were able to make it to in 22 precincts. What we saw out there was pretty orderly and exciting. People were excited to vote. One of the things we saw out in the field was that people, quite a few people had done mail-in ballots. So they came in and they hadn't been updated in the Delaware County database yet. So they would come in and say, the database is not showing me on the database, I'd like to vote. So the process, one of the processes was to give them a provisional ballot. And then they would vote provisionally, and then later on, their vote would be sorted out. That didn't happen. I observed, and the gentleman that was with me observed 7 different polls where the people were given a regular ballot. So they cast a vote and put it in. We let it happen a few times. We didn't jump all over them. It happened a couple of times. We went up. In all cases, the election judges were very forthcoming, very polite. They apologized and they said they couldn't do it. But that somewhat spurred me to go down to the counting center, which Leah described. It's on the Seaport Ave. It's a remote building, not much around it. And I wanted to take a look. All day long, I had been told that there were 10 to 20 GOP poll watchers down there and that everything was well in hand. And out of curiosity, I decided to go down. I arrived at 6 o'clock. With 4 other gentlemen, again, former military and some good citizens from Delaware County. And we weren't allowed to get in until 11 o'clock at night, and we had to get some legal help to get us in. So it took us 5 hours to get upstairs. After that, what we saw here is, what I saw is I really think the crux of this in Delaware County is, as an expert in this, I think it's impossible to verify the validity of about 100,000 to 120,000 votes. Now, Delaware County's got 425,000 registered voters. Approximately 300,000 of them voted. I don't know what the exact number ended up. Mayor Giuliani nailed that number. But of that number, over 100,000 are in question in my mind. What I saw as a forensics expert was an election process that was forensically destructive in the manner it was conducted, with the envelopes being separated from the ballots and gone to the other side of the room. And the problem with that from being forensically destructive is that when you go to do a recount, okay, the machines did a pretty good job of recounting, so if I have 120,000 ballots, mail-in ballots at one side of the room and envelopes at the other side of the room, it's still going to come out 102,000 votes for Vice President Biden and 18,000 votes for President Trump. I don't care how many times you recount those votes, you know, the ballot's going to come out the same every time. So the notion of a recount in a forensically destructive process doesn't work very well. What we saw there, what I saw there, was a chain of custody in all cases that was broken. It was broken for the mail-in ballots, the drop box ballots, the election day USB V-card flash drives. In all cases, the chain of custody and the procedures that were defined by the Delaware County Board of Elections and Election Process Review they didn't follow one. I couldn't even redline this multi-page document because the entire document would be, they didn't follow any of the procedures. So I personally observed USB V-cards being uploaded to the voting machines by the voting machine warehouse supervisor on multiple occasions. I saw this personally. I brought it to the attention of the deputy sheriff who was there stationed, who was a senior law enforcement officer, and I brought it to the attention of the clerk of elections. I brought it to their attention, I objected, and I said, this person is not being observed, he's not part of the process that I can see, and he's walking in with baggies, which we have pictures of, and it was submitted in our affidavits, and he was sticking these USBs into the machines. So I personally witnessed over that happened 24 times, over 24 times. We have multiple other witnesses that saw it, including Democrat poll watchers. And we were told, I was told the next day by the solicitors, well, actually not the solicitor, but the attorney that we had secured, that they said every election they leave a couple of USBs in the voting machines and they're brought back, and generally the warehouse manager comes over and puts them in. So in talking to the U.S. Attorney General McSwain and other law enforcement officers, I found out that was not the case, that generally, you know, more than two is unusual. So they denied they did it, but as of today, 47 USB V-cards are missing, and they're nowhere to be found. So I was told personally that these 24 to 30 cards that were uploaded weren't there. Those cards, I demanded that they didn't update the vote live time. They only updated it about once every 2 or 3 hours. I demanded they updated the vote so I could see what the result was, and it was 50,000 votes. And I think as a computer scientist, an American, and a patriot, it doesn't matter who those 50,000 votes were. I'll tell you they were for Vice President Biden. But what was shocking to me as an American, as someone who has gone to sea, gone to war, that that could even happen. So several other things that came up was on Thursday, it took us 3 days for them to obey the court order that I secured with Leah's help and the help of the Thomas More Society, who we thank incredibly good patriots. They got us in there. They got the order for us to get in and watch it, look at the back offices, which were locked for 5 minutes every 2 hours. I went in, I was the first one allowed to go in at 1:30 on Thursday, and then again at 3:30 for 5 minutes. The county solicitor had a stopwatch. On the first time, I was not allowed to touch anything. The second time I did. what I observed in the locked room in the back office was 70,000 unopened mail-in ballots. They were in boxes of 500, stacked in neatly. The gentleman that came in with me was a Democrat poll watcher, is a forensic pathologist, a very detailed, very dedicated man, and he took meticulous notes as well. And I verified with him, are you seeing what I'm seeing? We both agreed as GOP poll watchers and a Democrat poll watcher that we had witnessed 60 to 70,000. We had a little bit of a disagreement there. The problem with that was by that time, the mail-in ballots had already been counted. So 120,000 mail-in ballots had already been counted, posted, and done. So my question is, where did the 70,000 ballots go? And nobody knows. We have a picture in here of a large number of boxes that I took that were filled with what appeared to be ballots sitting by the Blue Crest machine. They were there for about 3 hours and then they disappeared. I found it notable when I watched it, when they were taking the ballots up and down. I said, I am an expert in fraud. I saw the ballots going up multiple elevators and racks. And I think a lot of well-meaning people and a lot of honest people were there doing that. They were trying to participate in the process. And I would say that 99% of the people there, the way the process was designed, I believe that people thought it was a non-fraudulent process. I heard that said many times. I said, there's no fraud going on here. I said, well, I'm not, I didn't even bring that up. But I think people saw what they wanted to see, and they saw what was intended for them to see. I called it at one point kabuki theater. I said it was all designed for us to see it. It was entertaining. There were cameras on it. When we finally got into the back room where the votes were being ingested, as a data scientist, I want to see where the data is coming in. And I wanted to know the universe of the votes. Well, the universe of the votes was only supposed to be 120,000 mail-in ballots. We were told there were 6,000 ballots remaining. So I said, okay, we have a universe of 126,000 votes. And then when I get back there, the universe wasn't 126,000 votes. The universe was 200,000 votes. So that's a problem. I think the last thing I wanted, a couple of other things, is the Blue Crest sorter machine was only manned by one person. People ask me all the time, how do people commit crimes? I know there's a lot of theories here, and I always look for the simplest thing. People that sticking USB sticks in, putting ballots in. Very simple thing, only takes a couple of people. Doesn't take a big conspiracy. I think people look at things and they use inflammatory words and, like fraud and so forth. As a forensic computer scientist, my interest is in the data. Where did it go? Where did the spoilage go? How did the data come in and go out of the system? So I think as a scientist, we need to look at that. We need to audit that. What was really upsetting to me, and the most upsetting, was I had spoke to multiple law enforcement agencies and literally begged multiple law enforcement agencies. I said, go in, and I said, in order to prove that nothing's happening, and either exonerate yourselves in the process or refute what I'm saying, please. It's a very simple process. Just go get the forensic evidence from the computers. It's a simple process. You turn the computer off. It's non-destructive, takes moments, maybe half an hour, 20 minutes to do it properly and collect the evidence. You open the computer up, you take a device called a bit blocker, you put it in the hard drive. It's done under the observation of law enforcement officers. They take a forensic image of the drive, put it all back together. It wouldn't have taken more than an hour to image all 5 machines. That was never done, despite my objections, and that was 3 weeks ago. Lastly, when they said, well, we've got all the forensic records and so forth. We just learned 2 days ago that virtually all chain of custody logs, records, yellow sheets, everything was gone. All forensic evidence, all custody sheets in Delaware County are gone. They had a signing party where they sat down and poll workers were invited back to recreate those logs And our understanding as of today was that they were unsuccessful in getting them all. So we have a situation where we have 100,000 ballots to 120,000 ballots, both mail-in and USB, that are in question. Now, there's no cure for this. There's no remedy for this. As a home charter, we could have a re-election in Delaware County for our own representatives within our own town, but there is no cure for that for the President of the United States. And I don't believe, as a citizen and an observer to this, that anybody could certify that vote in any good conscience. And if the Democrats that were part of this process, had done things, followed their own procedures, which they created almost unilaterally, we would be in a situation where they could exonerate themselves and they could say, Mr. Stenstrom, you've been misinformed. We have evidence here that refutes what you say. But that's not the case. They can't do that. So I say, if you can't certify that vote, and you can't certify 100,000 votes out of 300,000, then you can't certify Delaware County. And I'm done, and thank you for your time and patience.
And we will continue to listen to witnesses right here in Pennsylvania. More news now from Fox continues after this 2-minute break.
Mastriano introduced the next 15-minute panel. I want to note that we've also been joined on Zoom by Representative Kathy Rapp from Northwestern Pennsylvania. Doug?
Thank you, panelists. If you can stay in the area, we're going to bring up the next group here. We're going to save questions and answers for the end. Mr. Mayor, I understand my list might not be synchronized. I'm going to ask you to introduce the next folks coming up to testify. If you could pass the mic to the mayor, somebody. Thank you, Walt.
We could call up four more witnesses like this, or we could now put on the statistical expert who could explain some of this, and then put on the additional witness. Either way you prefer.
Statistical expert sounds.
Okay, then we'll call Colonel Waldron. And if you don't mind, if I can interrupt and ask him a few questions, can probably get it directed. It's good for me to do that because I don't understand it, so. I'm only kidding. Colonel, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Senator, Colonel, and gentlemen, ladies. My name is Phil Waldron. I'm a retired Army Colonel, 30 years. Spent the first half of my career just like Colonel Mastriano here as a cavalry officer conducting armed reconnaissance, counter reconnaissance. Last half of my career spent in information warfare as a psychological operations officer and information operations officer, conducted computer network operations, electronic warfare, special electronic warfare, deception, counter deception, and OPSEC, and a couple other specialties.
Sir,
you still got a Stetson in his purse. So I spent all of my time as an operations officer. My perspective looking at this this problem set is how to break in, how to break it, how to destroy it, how to manipulate it. And my team has been researching this specific issue since August. But we're working with another team that's been intently working on this problem set, the voting machine manipulation, for 2 years, since the Ted Cruz and Beto race in Texas in 2018 and the Kentucky governor's race, where there were significant anomalies observed. And I'd like to add that there are many, many more teams like ours, small teams that have joined in this fight, and they're throwing the flag left and right. So there's a lot of folks that are recognizing anomalies. The voting systems in the U.S. And in Pennsylvania were built to be manipulated. They've been used in elections around the world and stolen elections around the world in Venezuela, Italy, Argentina, Singapore, Bolivia as close as 2 weeks ago. The Philadelphia uses ES&S, Pittsburgh uses Dominion, other counties in Pennsylvania use Dominion and other systems. So what's the real deal? So all of these election systems have a common DNA. SGO Smartmatic sold Sequoia voting systems to Dominion in 2010. And then the Diebold company spun off Premier Election Systems to Dominion as a result of an antitrust suit. So the bottom line is that these systems have similar code and similar functions. And just so you know, I know there have been statements to the contrary, but I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge of Hugo Chavez's family members who told him not to worry about the populist threat against Maduro's election in Venezuela. Quote unquote, that it was guaranteed. Their father invested the money to build the SGO voting machine system. So I have no reason to doubt this gentleman. He's sworn an affidavit to this effect. But that's the root of the SGO voting machines. So these systems are not what you've been told. They are connected to the internet and servers outside of the US. They're connected from top to the bottom in the middle. There is no transparency, as our previous witnesses mentioned, as to how the voter information is processed, how and where it's stored. The voting record is able to be modified and or deleted by operators, administrators, and outside threats. Operators can assign votes for write-in ballots, blank ballots, or error ballots in large numbers so that they can be directed toward one candidate or another at the operator's or supervisor's discretion. And many experts have published how easily these machines can be hacked to manipulate votes. As a matter of fact, one of our white hat hackers previously discovered a malware that's present on the servers that captures every login and every password of every operator down to the precinct level that logs into one of these systems. It's just like giving the password to your bank account out, putting it on the dark web. It's not going to be there very long. And just so you probably are all aware, on 30 September, an election storage facility was robbed in your state. 30 USB devices were stolen and a laptop. Those USB devices more than likely had encryption devices. And you've just heard another previous witness talk about the non-standard use of the USB storage devices. So these systems, in a nutshell, allow authorized and unauthorized users to cancel votes, shift votes, preload votes, vote blank ballots, all in real time and in large numbers. They're connected from the top to the bottom. So one bad actor or a team of bad actors can have equally negative inputs. It's been described by another person in another state that we're working with, just like the lotto. Whoever organizes the lotto is always going to win. It's controlling the numbers and it's controlling the margins. Our experts and other academics believe that up to 1.2 million Pennsylvania votes could have been altered or fraudulent. This is what we discovered in the last 22 days. Really, only a detailed forensic analysis of the actual machines and software will truly show how many Pennsylvania citizens have had their civil rights violated. So to use these type of machines with little or no audit trails, little or no transparency of how the votes are processed, where they go, where they're stored, will never leave the public satisfied that we truly have a representative democracy. I'd like to correct something the mayor said. I am not a statistician. I'm a combat officer and didn't do well in math. But I can understand the numbers that he put out earlier. Want to share with you one chart. I believe it's in your package. So what our team has done is focused on the spike anomalies. And these are events where a numerical amount of votes are processed in a time period that's not feasible or mechanically possible under normal circumstances. I believe Greg Stenstrom mentioned earlier the processing of these ballots through machines. There's a manufacturer specified rate of speed that a number of ballots can be imaged and processed. These spike anomalies in this chart really show where for us to look forensically to actually determine what happened with these votes. Our team has looked at these systems And there are a dozen ways to interdict the voting process in these issues, whether it's mail-in ballot manipulations, they can scan and allocate votes, blank votes, where there was a 70,000 votes left in the back room. There's just lots of ways to interdict these systems. So with that, I'll answer any potential questions.
Thank you. Next panel, please.
Could I just
Yes, sir.
ask him to clarify one or two things? When we look at this Pennsylvania fixing the vote chart that they all have, could you explain at the very beginning what that line means, Biden injection?
So at the very beginning of the chart, where there's a circle, it says on election day, what that indicates is there is a spike in loaded votes, 337,000 plus or minus of some votes that were added in there in one big batch. So that was an anomaly in the reporting. Normally you would expect to see a smooth curve going up, not any big spikes. That's kind of what Greg was talking about, the anomalies of loading and uploading those votes. So that big spike that occurs there is a prime indicator of fraudulent voting.
And that's 604,000 votes in 90 minutes, is that right?
Correct. This is 337 votes, 337,000 votes in that
in that period of time.
Yes.
And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Close to 600,000. I think our figures were about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represent over time.
For Biden?
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
How about that? Now, just to go back to your original document, this one pager that they all have. Mail-in ballots counted without being observed. Those are the ballots we were talking about that were not observed in Allegheny County and in Philadelphia.
Correct.
Is that right? 682,770. Now, this is the part that is a mystery. Mailed ballots sent out, 1,823,148. But when you go to the count of the final count of the vote, there are 2,589,242 mail-in ballots. What happened? How do you account for the 700,000 mail-in ballots that appeared from nowhere?
So our cyber team uses white hat hacking techniques. They gather a lot of publicly available information, and that information was from the Secretary of State's website. That website has been updated as late as 11/16 this morning with provisional and mail-in ballots. So those numbers are still changing. They changed last night, so it's a continual target.
This is 22 days after the election.
That number, the 2.5 million number is no longer on the website.
Just been taken off?
It's not there anymore.
Is there any explanation for why it's been taken off?
There was no annotations.
But has there been a change made in the 2,589,242 mail-in votes that have been counted in the total vote?
I'd have to check the Secretary of State's website as of.
And could you also check and see, is there any change in the 1,823,148 ballots that were sent out?
The mail-out ballots number seems to be holding steady.
And was there any other method of producing ballots other than sending them out?
Not that we're aware of, unless as previous witnesses of testimony that the potential for multiple ballot counts. So ballots could have been.
And have you ever gotten a chance to examine any of these ballots?
No, that would be part of the forensic process. One suggestion, whoever does the analysis is using paper and ink analysis with a microphoto spectrometer. that would analyze the ink on those ballots to see if they were mass-produced.
More news now from Fox continues.
70 ballots that were entered without a single inspection of any kind. There also appear to be something like 700,000 ballots, mail-in ballots, that were never sent out, that were counted.
There are noted discrepancies in the
That's
Secretary of
a pretty
State's
big
report.
discrepancy.
Yes, sir.
And that's been there.
Thank you. We do have to press on to the next panel since we have a lot of questions pending here. Mr. Mayor, could you introduce the next panelists?
So now we have Jane Winters, Gary Feldman, who's going to be on a Zoom. Is he here? Well, then have him come up.
Please come up as you're called.
I believe Charles Nudo, N-U-D-O, and David Shestakis. I think I have them all. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll start with the men physically in the room here with your testimony, and then go to the Zoom after that, so please.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Gary Feldman. I am a resident and voter of Philadelphia City and County. I'm registered as a Republican. I have been involved with Philadelphia Republican politics for over 20 years now. I've had watcher certificates, and on this past November 3rd, 2020, I was issued a watcher certificate to be the watcher for President Donald Trump. This is the watcher certificate that I was given, and it is issued for President Donald Trump to me. These watcher certificates, I'm not sure the exact year, I'm going to say about 2002 or 2003, are now for county-wide. So everywhere in the county, the watcher certificate is good for. So Philadelphia is city and county, so this watcher certificate, which reads, this certificate authorized the individual to watch in any ward or division in Philadelphia. And that's what the top line. If you want to see the watcher certificate, I'll gladly bring it up. So anyway, I was in my vehicle as kind of like volunteering for the president with an attorney, and he was monitoring any kind of problems that could happen in Philadelphia. His name was Will Chamberlain, and he was pretty good on Twitter and other social media stuff. So we got a word that they were not letting Republican watchers in the polling places in South Philly. So we went to a place which happened to be a funeral parlor where they were doing the election, and I walked in with the watcher certificate in both hands to make sure that they wouldn't snag it out of my hand. They immediately wanted me to identify myself. One of the problems that happens is the Republican watcher certificates are this gold-orange color, where the Democrats are like a light blue. I've never really seen one, but I heard they're light blue. So they know right away that we're Republicans coming in there to watch. So two poll workers, I don't know who they were wearing masks and everything. I produced a certificate, and she starts saying it's not good here. And I'm like, it is. And I said, please read the top line. The gentleman that was with her said, would you like to go outside and talk about this? You know, I was not looking for a confrontation. And the other thing is, too, is I did have my bandana on. They had their face shield, but they weren't practicing social distancing. They were right on top of me. So we did step outside because he wanted to step outside. Will Chamberlain is not a Philadelphia resident, so he's not issued a Philadelphia watcher certificate. and he proceeded to take a video of me having a confrontation on the street with these two, I don't know who they were. I don't know, they were poll workers, you know, they never identified who they were. The video, which was released to the public, is a little over 30 seconds on Twitter, and it already has 3.8 million hits on Will's Twitter page. There is a complete video, and it's on my phone, and I know I did made it available to the senators. It's over a minute about what happened on the street. I tried to explain this watcher certificate is for the city of Philadelphia. You're in the city of Philadelphia, and you have to let me observe. I'm the eyes and ears of the President of the United States, and they wouldn't allow that.
More news now from Fox. We'll continue next.
Excuse me, be here today. Oh, sir.
Yeah, I just want to add another thing that's really kind of crucial. When this happened, the fact checkers group or organization, I don't even know what they are, started to put disclaimers on the video. Fact checkers said they contacted me. Fact checkers never contacted me. Fact checkers said that it was a misunderstanding. They said the commissioner's office tried contacting me. They used the name Kevin Feely from the commissioner's office. I don't know who Kevin Feely is. Nobody from fact checkers called me. I don't even know if they have my phone number. And the commissioner's office did nothing to follow up on any of this. I did see Commissioner Al Schmidt when we were doing the canvassing, but we didn't mention anything about what happened that day.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Shostokis. I'm an attorney, licensed to practice law in Illinois and Florida. Some time ago, I was a Cook County Assistant State's Attorney prosecutor, and during that time, I actually did election law enforcement during the course of that time, including seeing to it that people had appropriate access, precinct openings and closings, that machines were zeroed out. Since that time, I've either been a candidate or a campaign in over 10 other individual elections, and in 2016, I actually worked as a volunteer for the Trump-Rubio campaign in Broward County, Florida. Discovered them opening mail-in ballots in a locked room. Before that was all said and done, we actually had a Broward County judge monitoring everybody's access. He was actually on site monitoring everybody's access to see to it that that could happen, see to it that everybody would have appropriate access. Currently, I am lead counsel in conjunction with Judicial Watch in a suit called Illinois Conservative Union versus the Illinois State Board of Elections for violations of the board in terms of the National Voter Registration Act. Given that kind of background to give you some idea of where I'm coming from on this subject. On October 24th this year, I came to Pittsburgh as a volunteer with Lawyers for Trump, and I was asked to organize folks to do monitoring of the pre-canvass activities during the course of the next week. About myself with some other volunteers made over 500 phone calls. We recruited 50 individuals that were willing to come and canvass or come and monitor the pre-canvass, and along with 25 other out-of-state lawyer volunteers. We had organized all this because, of course, we had 19 in Allegheny County. There were 19 Republicans on the ballot, and so we were able to have credentials through the RCAC for 19 watchers at any given moment. So we had to organize them. So we organized everybody during the course of time, and they had given us credentials in advance. And then 2 days before the election, the Friday before the election, we got a call from the Electoral Board and said, oh, by the way, you need to submit everybody's credentials in advance, and you need to have everybody's signatures on the credentials that you sign in advance. And of course, we'd already had put together a team of 70. We'd allocated them 4 hours a time in 4-hour shifts to be able to monitor through the course of the whole period of time. And then over the next 3 days, we scrambled like heck to try and get signatures from the various volunteers and other council that were assisting us. Needless to say, we lost about 25 folks that we were unable to get the credentials to in advance and get the signatures back and forth and all the things necessary to do that. So I wanted to mention that you're hearing about global, huge global issues, but it goes down to the petty as well. It goes down to the petty as well in terms of interfering with his access and interfering with changing rules. I know Secretary Bookvar changed some huge rules, but the local boards, day in and day out, were changing rules as well to make the monitoring process next to impossible. At any rate, we did that, and then we wound up. I went with a group at about 6:45 on Election Day to 901 Pennsylvania Avenue in Allegheny County, where they were doing the pre-canvass. And at the time when we arrived, we were herded into what's best known as the corral. I'm sure you've kind of seen or heard about those things. It was a fenced-in area that was the fence was maybe 2.5, 3 feet high. Closest anybody could get to make any observations was maybe 15, 20 feet from the closest ballot processor to the maybe 150 feet, because we were in about a 20,000 square foot area where the biggest room was taking place. Biggest activity was taking place. But I would mention that the mail-in ballots were coming into that room already sliced open at the top. We have no idea when or where the slicing took place, where the opening took place, or what was in fact inside those ballots, inside those mail-in envelopes. At that point in time, folks were then separating the mail-in ballot from the secrecy envelope. You could see that, that's exactly what they're doing. They put one on the side and one on the other side. And then they take them and put them someplace, and I have no idea. And then the secrecy envelopes would go to another slicing machine, and that'd be sliced open. And at that point, then the ballots would come back, and they'd be divided from the secrecy envelopes. We had really no concept of what was going on. In the room next door, there was a smaller room around the corner that you had to leave the 20,000 square foot room. There was one about 7,500 square feet. And in that room, there was a machine, and the machine would be apparently sorting things by the barcodes. And then eventually, somehow or other, people would come in with big armloads of ballots from the other room. Apparently with no provenance, no explanation of where they came from. And here's an interesting thing that you guys might consider when you're doing this in the future. One of the biggest bottlenecks would take place at this point in time, because all these ballots came in folded, tri-folded, right? And all the ballots had to be flattened. And so they would take the ballots and put them under big stacks of reams and reams of paper to flatten them out, and then there'd be workers kneading the ballots to try and make them so that they could go through the machines. And when everybody's saying, well, you haven't counted anything for, X number of hours, and they say, well, we're trying to flatten the ballots. It was absurd and obscene. So at any rate, that was and when everybody was waiting, that's what was going on. They're flattening the ballots for most part. And then there was about 6 machines where they were feeding the ballots. And while they had 6 machines feeding the ballots, as they would go in, 2 or 3 would kick out to a different tray than the other tray. And workers sometimes would take the ones that weren't kicked out and put them in a stack. And then sometimes you'd run all of them through again, and sometimes run 2 or 3. We never had any idea if they were zeroing out a machine, what they were doing. I asked the solicitor, the county solicitor who was there. I said, what's going on? He told me that this was a Pitney Bowes representative working there that had been sworn in as a county representative, and that sometimes the ballot machine doesn't count those things, and then so he runs them through and zip. But there was absolutely no provenance to what was going on in the counting machines. I have no idea, because of course they would just take stacks of take stacks of ballots that had been sitting under reams of paper trying to be flattened and then run them through the machine. So we have no idea about that. And so at one point I asked the county solicitor, I said, can you describe for me the journey of a ballot from the time it hits the door to the time that it's counted? Where does it go? What's the process, et cetera? I had a short answer, no. I then asked him, I said, can you give me any written protocol about what is supposed to happen? It hits the door, then it goes to a machine theoretically sorted by barcodes, from what I understood from someone else, so that if there's a challenge in advance of the election, they know where to look, because of course at 5 p.m. on the Friday before elections, you can challenge things for people having died and a few other reasons. And but then I asked, I said, is there any written protocol for that? And he said, no, we have no written protocol for what we're conducting, what we're doing here. So he answered, he's supposed to be the one giving legal advice to people on how to legally handle ballots. And he tells me that he doesn't know how they're handled, and he tells me that there is no written protocol on how they are supposed to be handled. So I might suggest that there was just literally no way to change. I mean, there was no way to challenge. There was no way to look at those ballots. And I would say, in my experience, electoral experience, one of the things that legitimizes elections is the ability of not a disinterested third party to review what the process is, but actually an adversarial third party to review what the process is. And this was completely and utterly absent. I had about 25 other affidavits from other folks that had joined me during the time that had been part of this that describe essentially the same thing over there in Allegheny County. Most of whom were attorneys and had been versed on the comings and goings of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which I might suggest ultimately the last decision in rate canvassing, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ultimately said that it doesn't matter how far you're away from the ballots because you don't have the right to challenge anything anyway. I read the opinion and I said to myself, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court just called off elections in the state of Pennsylvania. And I would suggest that the remedy for what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court does lies with the distinguished legislators that are before me. But the fact is if there is no opportunity for anybody to look at them, and the court has the temerity to say, it doesn't matter if you come in or not, it doesn't matter how far you are, because even if you're there, you don't have any right to do anything. Sure.
If you could summarize, sir, we are running out of
Yes,
time.
I'm sorry. I apologize for being an attorney. No, I apologize, Senator. But I just, I'll summarize in one thing. One of the guarantees in the United States Constitution is that, in fact, every state shall have a Republican form of government. And I would suggest to you, if the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania determines that they're going to run the state and allow the local election authorities to essentially appoint winners, the state of Pennsylvania no longer meets that guarantee as a Republican form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If we could go to our two.
And more news now from Fox will continue in just 2 minutes, everyone.
And go ahead and start when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Priade-Havey. I am an attorney and a resident of Montgomery County and the chair of the Montgomery County Republican Committee. Thank you, Senators and Mayor Giuliani, for providing me the opportunity to speak. After the primary, our committee prepared and provided to the PA legislative leaders and members of the Montgomery County staff in charge of the election a 30-page report of the mail-in ballot and election day problems and irregularities we experienced in Montgomery County. We made detailed recommendations for changes with the hope that the general election would be smoother. Unfortunately, that was not the case. There are a number of issues that evidence a total lack of transparency regarding the handling of the general election in Montgomery County. First, the Montgomery County Republican Committee was not provided meaningful view of the mail-in ballots at any time despite our requests. Second, we were not provided with regular detailed information about the mail-in ballots over the course of the election despite our requests. Third, we still lack complete and detailed information about these ballots despite our written requests. We were provided our first opportunity to view and learn about the canvassing site on Sunday, November 1st, just 2 days prior to the election. At that visit, the chief operating officer of the county showed us the room where the canvass was to take place. To our shock, we were told we could not directly check the mail-in ballots. After some significant pushback by me, the county agreed to allow 2 watchers inside the room, but they were never able to see the ballots up close. Again, there was no meaningful observation of the ballots and absolutely no check of the ballots by anyone other than the county staff, which is all run by the Democrats, as to whether or not these ballots met election code criteria. At the most basic level, we were not even able to check to see if a voter voted twice or if a voter was deceased. And with the removal of the signature being a check for existing voters, there was no way to protect against someone fraudulently voting for a registered voter. In addition to having no meaningful observation or review of over 200,000 mail-in ballots, we were not provided with the change in rules by the county to allow the curing of mail-in ballots in a timely manner. On Thursday, October 29th, I received an email from Frank Dean, who ran the election for the county, with a list of ballots with what they described as defects, and if the voter had been contacted by the county to cure the defect. At the tour of the canvass on November 1, we were shown bundled mail-in ballots divided by precinct, which the county identified as having a defect, and explained that those individuals had not cured these ballots as of November 1st. The county did not provide the Montgomery County Republican Committee with an opportunity to have an authorized representative present in what was effectively the pre-canvass, a legal term, pre-canvass of the ballots, when it reviewed and contacted voters about their defective mail-in ballots. After immediate investigation, it was clear that other counties across Pennsylvania were not allowing this illegal pre-canvassing to take place. In particular, our neighboring county, Berks County, a county that the president won by over 8%, interpreted the law as written and did not contact voters to cure ballots weeks prior to the election, as Montgomery County did. A portion